Excellent. Hi, Carlos. Nice to see you. As always, let's start with the team news. How's the squad looking ahead of QPR tomorrow?
Positive in terms of the number of players. We continue having the same players available that we had in the previous game. This is always one positive news because it means that we didn't lose any of the players that were with the team. And at the same time, depending about the training this afternoon, we can add, if people finish well the training, is going to be one possible player that add to the squad. And at the same time, Pritchard exactly the same. Both are going to make like the last test. And if everything is positive, both can be with the squad tomorrow.
Oh, that's excellent news. We'll come back to that in a second. What about Juninho Bacuna? How's he?
Bacuna is going to try to train today too. He didn't train with the group until today, but depending about the feeling of the training, of course, we cannot make a strong training today. We will test a little bit more him just to see if he can be available for tomorrow or he need to wait a little bit more.
And Richard Stearman as well. How close is he to a return?
No, Stearman is going to be one long-term injury. I don't expect to have him in the next months.
Okay, that's a shame. Wanted to check on Harry Toffelo as well. He came off in the second half against Cardiff. Was that due to an injury or was it a strategic substitution?
I think Toffelo is one of the players that always is able to play in a row. Always some player, that's why he had the number of games consecutive that he was playing until now. But at the same time, for me, it's important couple of things. First of all, trying to reduce some minutes in some players on game because it's going to be important to keep the intensity that they need to keep in the next games. And at the same time, to try to add players to the squad, like in this position, for example, Brown is not playing a lot. And always it's important to have the alternative of Toffelo ready, just in case in any game we can need him.
You mentioned Pippa. He's been so influential this season. Equally, Harry Toffelo as well. Do you think opposing teams are starting to pay them a lot more attention because of how influential they are in your side?
We want to have one team that always be ready to face with any player and any type of opponent. In the moment we start to depend about some players, for me, it means that we are not working enough well. Because in this year, you can lose one player a couple of weeks and the player is going to miss 3 or 4 games. So the most important thing is like all the players be ready to play with the ideas that we want to play. At the same time, to every player be ready to face the championship level because it's championship is a high level. And we need a lot of players in the squad or all the players in the squad ready to face the championship level and ready to play with the identity that we have as a team.
We've just been talking to Carol Eiting and he was telling us about doing the analysis on Tuesday night's game. How much can you learn from the defeat to Cardiff moving ahead to QPR tomorrow?
I think there are teams who play total different, but at the same time, both teams can defend a little bit similar. Cardiff is a team that defends being compact in a 4-4-2 shape, something that QPR can do too. QPR at the same time is a little bit more aggressive in offensive half. They usually move the team not to be in a low block, especially because it's a team that even being winning, they continue having the same mentality. Cardiff, in the moment they score 1 goal, you know that you are going to face the same shape, but even a little bit deeper. So I think in QPR, they defend with similar shape, but in a different height in the pitch. But in attack, it's totally different because QPR is one team that try to play from the back. For me, it's one of the teams in the league that are making better football in the league, with any doubt. The last year, I faced them with Leeds the 2 times, and I start to feel this. But I think this year, they assimilate better the ideas, and the team try to attack more and having more clear the determination to have more the ball, and they are doing fantastic in terms of the style and the attack point of view. And at the same time, it's a team that is going to be a little bit more aggressive, but in attack is totally different of Cardiff. Like Cardiff, they will be more directly. They will try to use the set pieces more to go with all the team and move you back. And I think this game is going to be with 2 versus QPR, with 2 teams that have the same identities or ideas to attack. Then always is going to challenge us how we are ready to defend this type of attacks.
Equally, despite playing nice football, passing football, QPR are below Huddersfield in the table so far. Does that surprise you?
Sometimes, yeah, because I think it's a team that have deserved more points than the points that they have in the table. And when I say you this, is because I go following all the games that they are playing. I am watching all the chances that they are missing. But it's a team that, in terms of produce, they are producing a lot of things. And always, when you are coaching one team, it's important that your team produce chances. I think both teams, we have a very similar ideas. Maybe our only difference is the style that we have to defend, because we are defending in different ways. But I think it's similar team that I think in the last 3-4 games, they start to create more stability in the first 11. They start to add players in the first 11 that before they were in the squad. And for me, it was the right decision, because they start to play together, play with a similar level of quality and similar understanding of the football situations.
People talk a lot about consistency in football and the need to be consistent week in, week out. Actually, how hard is that when the opponents are different and the players are different because you have to react to injuries? Consistency, well, how easy is that to achieve given the circumstances that you're in?
Consistency is not easy, and inconsistency is going to be one of the challenges for us this year, because the idea is like even play, like you say, versus different opponents and even play with different teammates. The idea is to try to be adapted to solve any type of situation. So for me to have this consistency, even in the character to face the game, consistency to trying to beat any difficult moment that can appear during the game, because always during the game appear difficult moments, I think is going to be one of the keys between the success or to don't have success this year.
And is that perhaps why sometimes, particularly in defence, players make mistakes, because there isn't that consistency of the same back four, the same goalkeeper week in, week out, which is just not possible?
Yes, but the idea for me is the challenge is always to have this consistency, but without depending about the player that we are playing, because if we think that it's going to be a season to play with 11 players all the year, it's impossible. I think you can repeat a little bit more and to have more stability in the first 11 when you play week by week, even if you play just once between the week, but maybe 1 week yes, 1 week no. But when you are playing in a role like we are playing right now, it's totally different, and you need to have this consistency in the style, in the character, and in the be able to face the different type of opponents every 2 weeks with different teammates. Because in the moment we think that we can only be consistent when we repeat the players, it's going to be impossible to repeat the players all this year.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine. Steve, you pick up from there, please.
Hi, Carlos. You mentioned the rotation there, and are you happy with? Are you hoping that having more players available will give you better options off the bench? Do you feel that has held you back recently?
I think it's going to be necessary to have this option from the bench. One, especially because we have 5 options to make changes, especially because some opponents are going to use the 5 subs, and we are going to need for some reason these subs. And the moment we have less players available to play with ideas in the championship level, we are going to have less chances to can sub any injury, and we are going to have less options to can replace any player during the same game.
And obviously you need to be cautious with any injury, but do you feel that Pippa and Pritchard will be able to start tomorrow, or are they more likely to be used from the bench?
I don't think it's positive to have players in the bench that they don't have options to play the game. So I always try to avoid to have players on the bench that they can play 10 or 15 minutes, because for me, you never know when you are going to need the player. If, for example, we are playing, imagine with Miko is a first 11, knowing that Pippa only can play 50 minutes, if the Miko, we hope no, but suffer one injury in the minute 20 of the game, and our only right back possible to play is Pippa, and he only can play 50 minutes, it doesn't make sense, because then we don't have the alternative to the Miko who can play 60 minutes. So I think always it's important to have players, for me, available as a minimum 60 minutes, with the options to play 60 minutes, knowing that, for example, depending on the type of injury, the risk of to repeat the injury is going to increase with the pass of the minutes. But for me, the minimum number of minutes that one player have to be ready to play with any problem is 60 minutes. And after, if something happens, this is football, can happen, one injury can happen to the player who has an injury, and one injury can happen to the player that doesn't have any type of injury. But I think as a minimum, they need to be able to play 60 minutes to can be with the squad, because if not, doesn't make sense that they are taking one place that another player who is fit could take.
Yeah, makes sense. We've talked a little bit the other day about those mistakes that have been happening probably a bit too much recently in defence and in possession in your own half. What have you done this week to try and make sure that doesn't happen at the weekend?
I think the most important thing is to mentalize the player about the demands and mentalize the players that we need to be very competitive. And competitive, like I say a lot of times, is not only to run or to fight. Be competitive is to keep your level of concentration during the 90 minutes. And your level of concentration is not only about what you do when you have the ball. Your level of concentration is what you do to prevent that one mistake can create one high chance for the opponent. So, for example, because the mistake is going to be part of the football, because football is full of mistakes. The key for me is that when you suffer one mistake, you don't suffer the big impact of the consequence of the mistake, and the big impact is to concede one goal. In the moment you have one mistake and you don't suffer the goal, you know that is part of the game. Of course, when our strikers lose one ball and they have one mistake and one loses concentration because it's no miss of quality, is loss of concentration in that moment, or maybe the consequence of the fatigue and you lose one ball, usually you don't have any type of consequence because you lose the ball in a higher part of the pitch. That's why to be defender, that's why to be a keeper is different in the pitch, because you need to know how to manage better every second, to be very concentrated, because you know that every mistake in the back can take one goal from the opponent team. And these mistakes can be in attack and these mistakes can be in defense. And in attack, these mistakes can appear when you have the ball or when we are without the ball. That's why we need to try to create one structure in defense, one structure between players that allow us to can solve any mistake of our teammates trying to avoid these goals or these chances. That you say versus Stoke City we couldn't do, and with the mistakes that we did, they used very well our mistakes to score the goal, and the other day was exactly the same. But at the same time, I don't think we need to create a weak mentality in our players. The most important thing is to be ready to face this type of situation, because if you start to create weak ideas that we cannot do something, I think we are reducing our powerful in our possibilities that we can have as a team, and our targets only seem to put the team in the higher level that we can have.
And is there a tactical element to that then, in terms of making tweaks that minimise the cost of those mistakes?
No doubt, always the idea in football is that try to prevent the losing of the ball when you are in attack, to don't suffer the consequences of any counter-attack. The counter-attack can be in the middle of the pitch, or the counter-attack can be just in your box. That's why in our box we need to be more conscious about the decision that we need to make. Not only, like I told you, when I have the ball, even in the moment before I have the ball, to can prevent any type of pressing of the opponent. I think, for example, in the situation of the second goal the other day, Sarr knows very well that if he did a running before to receive the ball, he will be far off the winger. In this moment, he doesn't receive the pressing. And if you make a bad control, that this can happen to any player, not only to Sarr, this situation can happen to any player, then you have time enough to can react because the opponent is more far. So sometimes are small details what change a lot one situation. And only with one small detail that everyone can be focused to do, you are going to reduce a lot the impact of the mistake. So it's not just to say we are not going to play from the back, because it means that we are not going to play football, because if we play football, can happen the mistake. The mistake can happen in all the height of the pitch. In play football, we have the risk to have the mistake. What we need to try to do is to be very concentrated to reduce the impact of the mistake that are going to appear in the games.
And that's a process for you as much as it is for the players, isn't it? That they'll be wanting to learn from you, and you're also learning what your players are capable of.
And at the same time, all of us, we need to learn to be competitive every 2 days. Because for me, football, this is a different football when you play once per week. It's a different football when you play twice per week. The demanding of football to play every 2 days or 3 days is very high. That we need to be ready to face and to be competitive every 2 or 3 days. This is for me one of the higher learnings that we are preparing this year like this, trying to mentalize our players how important it is to be ready to play the game every 2 days. Because it's easier to play one game every 3 days because you have enough time to recover from the previous effort, enough time to prepare all the situations that can happen to the next game, and enough time to be with a good level of energy without fatigue to the next game. But here is different. And it's not going to be never an excuse. We need to be ready to face games with enough recovery, with the fatigue, and at the same time, knowing how to manage the mistakes that, or the defeats, or the negative result, or the positive results of the previous game, and trying to don't be affected by this. Try to continue your process, to be very concentration, to give the best answer to the game.
Great stuff. Thanks, Carlos. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Stuart, you can pick up from there, please.
Carlos, can I just ask on Richard Stearman, is it a serious enough injury that you might need to sign another central defender in January?
More than to be focused about what we are going to do with him in January, unfortunately, we are going to lose him for, as a minimum, couple of months. And of course, Stearman was one player important for us, one player that played a lot of minutes. Fortunately, we have recovered to Eamon Green, that he wasn't involved in the team at the beginning of the year. Now in this part of the year, he's involved with the team. So fortunately, we have now one clear replacement for Stearman, but at the same time, we know how Stearman was important for the team, playing a lot of minutes with us. And we know that to have alternative of players in this position is necessary. But our focus now, right now, is to be working along with the players that we can develop to have them ready in case they need to help the team in any game.
And as Catherine mentioned, we spoke to Carol Eiting earlier, and he spoke about how much he was enjoying learning, working under you. Have you been impressed with how receptive all your players have been to learning new ideas?
I think more than my ideas, it's like how they are open to make the best that they can do. I am very happy about, or very pleased about the mentality of the group of players in terms of to give everything, in terms to keep the concentration when they are watching a lot of football by videos, because it's like nowadays you cannot train a lot. Nowadays you need to analyze more than training, because now in the training you need to more to recovery. And I think this is a group of players that they have an open mind, and at the same time we have some of the important of the experienced players that they are very focused in this type of process that all the team we are going to have. But I think the mentality of our squad is the right mentality, to have the open mind, to continue growing, to face the mistakes, watching the mistake, to don't be looking for excuse, just to try to take responsibilities. And always when you have one group of players who likes to take responsibility of the situation, the growing and the develop of the process always is higher.
And how important have Carol's goals from midfield been in terms of sharing the burden of goal scoring?
I think always is important when our number 8 and our number 10 is the position that he is playing, arrive to the box, and at the same time when they arrive to the box, they can find solution in the back part of the box, or even going inside to the box and finishing the action. It's like our goals are not going to come only by the number 9, because sometimes the number 9 are making a lot of very positive movements that are going to move the defenders, and this movement of the defenders are going to create spaces that we can use from the second lines. And the closer players in the second line after the striker is the number 8 and the number 10, the position where the team is playing. But at the same time, we want to arrive to the box with the wingers. We want to arrive when we cross from the left side with the right side winger. We want to arrive with the left side winger when we cross from the right side winger. And at the same time, one player that we want to use in the last part of the action is the fullbacks, or are the fullbacks, because it's one position or one player that is difficult to mark when he arrives and supply from the opposite side. So the important is that not only use the number 9 when we create one chance, try to, as a team, arrive to the position that can be key to score the goal.
And just finally from me, how impressed have you been with those players like Carol and others who've come to a new country, not had a pre-season? It must be very difficult for them to adapt, particularly in these COVID times. How impressed have you been with how well that they have adapted?
I always think that the player with the skills and the player with the understanding of the game, they don't need the same time to adapt it to the player that doesn't have this type of understanding of the situation. That's why, for me, we need to analyze very well how the players feel the game, and at the same time, when you are trying to play with some ideas, trying to add to the squad players that his football have exactly the same ideas, then you don't have to find any type of difference. Of course, there is adaptation, because never is the same to play with one teammate with another teammate. Never is the same to play with one level of opposition with another type of opposition, and you need adaptation. But this adaptation has to come naturally. That's why, for me, for example, the national teams of the countries, they don't train a lot. The national teams of the country, they don't training with them, and they are not playing many games together. But sometimes you put them together and play, and they play really well, because they are top players, they are the best players of the country, and they have a similar understanding of the football. That's why everything arrives by themselves, by the understanding of the situation. I think what we try to do in the trainings is to give more skills to the skill that the players have, while at the same time to make the players conscious of the skill that they have to use more times in the game. Because we cannot create any different thing than the things that the players by themselves are ready to create. So sometimes only putting together players with the similar ideas, I think the teams can grow a lot too.
So in some respects, is football intelligence almost as important as technical ability when you sign a player?
I think all have to be in the same level. We cannot say that it's only the technique if you don't have the understanding, because if you don't have the understanding of the situation, you cannot use your technique and your skills. And if you have just understanding the situation, but we don't have the skills, every time you receive the ball, even if you move to the key spaces, after you are not going to produce an important thing. So for me, football is one sport that you need to link all the things, the understanding of the situation, your skills to face the situation, and your physical demands to come show these skills during 90 or 100 minutes, and at the same time to use these skills every 2 days or 3 days versus different type of opponents. So that's why this league is in the level that the league is, and at the same time, that's why it's very difficult to play in Championship.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time, Carlos. Good luck on Saturday.
Alfie, are you happy?
Thank you.
Just a quick one from me, really. Hi, Carlos. You've got 2 home games coming up now this week against Queen's Park Rangers and Sheffield Wednesday. They're obviously both below you in the table. How much importance are you placing on these 2 fixtures to pick up, a good amount of points?
I think I always face any opponent with a lot of respect, and at the same time, I always face any opponent watching the possibilities that we have to face the game. Every opponent is very difficult. Every opponent is with different type of style. Nowadays, we are in a moment of the season that the position in the table is still to be relative, because everything can change a lot. So more than to be thinking in the position of the table, we are going to be thinking in the strengths of the teams, in the weaknesses that every team that we have, because always you have some strength at the same time, some points that you want to continue improving. So it's like a weakness point that all the teams we have. Then we are going to try to face the team with the highest respect that we can have, and not because we want, because they deserve. Because when you analyze teams that they have strengths, means that you need to have a lot of respect from how they play the game. But at the same time, we are going to face the games, trying to increase our possibilities to come harder and to have more answers to take the maximum number of points that we can have.
That's brilliant. Thank you.